How vulnerable is the Iranian regime at this point?
Well, after 46 years of rule, the Islamic Republic is probably at its weakest moment that it's ever been. I mean, the past few days of Israeli attacks on the Islamic Republic have not only been a significant operational and strategic weakening of this regime, but also a significant psychological weakening of this regime. Ali Khamenei has ruled this country without elections as a one-man show, really, for 30 years. And the generals who rise up in his armed forces do not necessarily rise up because they're great military strategists. They rise up because they're personally loyal to him and they're loyal to his regime. And so to have woken up in the middle of the night several days ago, Ali Khamenei, with the head of his armed forces dead, with the head of his Revolutionary Guard, his Praetorian Guard effectively dead, with his senior political advisors dead, that was a blow to a man who is used to controlling everything, controlling the direction of his country. And for these men to be killed in the middle of the night in their own homes, in ritzy apartments in North Tehran, was a real blow to this regime operationally, but again, psychologically, for somebody like Ali Khamenei, who's used to calling all the shots. So I think it's fair to say that with that, it's weaker than it's ever been.
Well, how realistic is the Israeli goal, as articulated by that country's defense minister, to change the regime in Iran? How realistically is that as an aim for Israel now?
Well, over the past 10 to 15 years, you've seen increasing signs of domestic dissatisfaction with this regime. Iranians, in 2009, you recall the Green Movement, of course, the murder of Neda al-Sultan in 2016, 17, 19, most recently with the Women Life Freedom protests after the killing of the young girl Mahsa Amini. You've seen Iranians on the streets against this regime. The regime's own leaked internal polls say that 70% of the country don't support the regime. Even their traditional religious base or lower economic class base no longer support the regime because of the economic pressure the regime is facing, no longer able to pay subsidies that they used to. So it's fair to say that the regime does not have domestic support, and that's based on polling inside the country and the regime's own sources. Now, an attack like this, of course, throws an entirely new thing into the situation. What we have yet to see is significant rally to support this regime, even in the face of a foreign attack on regime installations. And I think part of that is because of how the Israelis have messaged this. They've been very clear, from Prime Minister Netanyahu to the defense minister and others, saying that their war is not with Iran or the Iranian people, but rather with the Islamic Republic, and in fact saying very positive things about Iran. Iran has a great...
You think the Iranian people buy that? You think they believe that?
I think that many do. I mean, the Israelis have been very keen, in fact, to often flatter Iranians and say that Iran is a country with 2,500 years of civilization, going back to Cyrus the Great. And I think that many Iranians are so tired of a regime that have really tortured them and held them hostage for so long, so that when they see the head of the Revolutionary Guards killed, for them, they don't see that as a compatriot being killed, but rather as a terrorist being eliminated.
Is there a political alternative in Iran to the current regime? Is there an infrastructure in hiding that can step up and fill any void?
There is. What we see on the ground, and this comes from protest chants, not only polling, but what people on the ground are saying, is that there's a significant amount of sympathy and support for the pre-revolutionary system. Of course, you recall before the Islamic Republic, the Shah ruled Iran. His eldest son, Reza Pahlavi, lives in exile in the United States, between there and Europe. On the streets in the past several years, we've increasingly seen his name chanted as an alternative to this regime. He has said that he's willing to step in as a transitional leader, not necessarily to come in and be the next leader of the country, but to offer his political capital to secure a peaceful and secure transition and lead the country to democratic elections. So that's at this point the most likely alternative, given the domestic support.
If the Iranian regime survives this assault, is it not more likely at this point that it does make that decision to pursue a nuclear weapon?
I think that's very likely. I think that that would have been the case whether or not this attack had happened. I think that's one thing that we in the West often don't really understand, is that the regime in Iran is fundamentally different from almost any other government. It is, at the end of the day, a revolutionary regime. Its courts are still revolutionary courts. Its guard is still a revolutionary guard. And when the supreme leader himself says that death to America is not just our slogan, it's our policy, I think it's time to take that quite seriously. So this will certainly expedite that process. I think if this regime survives, which I think is a big question, this regime is more vulnerable than it's ever been. It could very easily collapse. So it is time for Western policymakers, but also investors, to start thinking about what a different Iran might look like. If they do survive, they will certainly make a run for it. But they could have done that before. These negotiations really for this regime were an aim to buy time, try to get sanctions relief because the economy has been crushed by sanctions. But I think it's very possible that this regime collapses, and we're looking at an entirely new Iran, again, for policymakers, but also for investors.